We want to stay innovative. We want to keep things moving quickly, but we have to understand how, when we introduce those things without proper risk management, it can also easily be exploited by fraudsters.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Good Question podcast, our podcast here at Inscribe, where we ask the big questions shaping the future of fraud, AI, and trust. So I'm Ronan Burke, CEO and co-founder of Inscribe, and I'm excited to be joined by two incredible risk leaders who sit at very different but increasingly converging parts of the financial ecosystem. So firstly, we have Hua Li, Head of Payment Risk at TikTok, and also Angela Diaz, as Senior Principal of Operational Risk Management, External Fraud at Discover. It's great to have you both join us today. Thanks for giving us some of your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So I think to get things started, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your background, your current roles, and how your teams fit into the broader organizations. So yeah, well, if you'd like to kick us off about just a brief introduction about your role and the teams.
Yeah, thanks. I can start. I'm currently working as a head of a payment risk for the TikTok in US. And our team literally sitting under the global payment department. We help protect the financial health, and also we will protect the customer experience as well.
I'm currently in second line risk management for Discover. My team primarily focuses on a risk appetite, targeted risk assessments, owning, drafting, updating the fraud risk management policy. And we're very heavy in strategy and offering guidance and credible challenge to the executive leaders that are forming the strategies, working with the technologies to fight fraud on a daily basis.
Awesome. Thanks for the introductions. And I think to ground the conversation, I think it'd be really helpful just to give an example of what a typical, if there is one, fraud case looks like. So while for TikTok, for example, you work on like protecting the payments side of the business, I'm just very curious as to what that looks like. Like for a bank or a fintech, it's much more obvious. And so for the listeners, it'd be great just to get a quick overview of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I can talk briefly what my day-to-day life. So every morning when we get up, we look at dashboard, a lot of dashboard. We check all the happening from yesterday, and also especially loss rate, those things, and approval rate, and risk-related decline rate, those things, and by the different payment methods, different business line, and etc. This we call this perception, right? So we want to make sure we percept what happened important during last day. And besides that, actually, we working on the project. We try to shape the product by project, and then to push our capability lifting, so day by day. And other than that, we also have a cross-team communication to understand what the business, some new product, new business line, and those things. And of course, we have our internal like weekly meeting or like project-oriented meetings.
Got it. Can you just describe a little bit more about how like fraud would occur? Like, for example, where are these payments coming to and from? Are they, for example, customers of TikTok or disbursements to influencers on TikTok?
Yeah, so for us, we run a platform. We have a multiple business line. I can take a live broadcast, live streaming as one of the business line we are protecting. On the one side, we have the audience, right? So they watch the live streaming videos, and then we have a function they can tip the host if they like the host, or if they value the content they broadcast. And on the other side, like we help the host. We call host or influencer or creators, and they do the streaming, and then when they get tipped, we will need payout to them. So this sitting in their account, and we in different region have a different payout program, and we will need payout them. So this kind of is like a marketplace, right? So we need to take money in from one side and pay out money out from other side. And as when the money transaction those happen, the fraud sometimes come, and they can be like collusion, can be unauthorized, can be account takeover, etc.
Yeah, awesome. That's super helpful to know. And it's something I don't think a lot of folks probably fully appreciate with TikTok is that it is a marketplace in a way, and that like you can transact money in via tips. And on that note, is there a feature capability to like sell items on TikTok? So let's say you're a clothing influencer and you can buy items directly in the TikTok app.
Yeah, in the live stream, actually, we have a called a talk like a coin or something like that. People can buy that in advance, or they can buy on the field, right? And then they have a different kind of a gift that they can tip to the host. So they have a lot of choice, and also have some funny effect. Different gift, they have a different funny effect that will make it fun, right? So that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we do value the content creators, right? So how to motivate them to give them, and I think that's actually the how we make the ecosystem like more healthy and benefit for the audience as well.
yeah, super helpful. And so I guess essentially like how fraud can occur is would be like account takeover. Let's say somebody gets access to a host account, and then it could be a large influencer where they're getting dispersed like $40,000 a month, and instead of that $40,000 going to the actual creator, they get access to the email password, MFA, log in, and then they change the disbursement details for the bank account number to give them that $40,000 for that month. And before the host knows and before TikTok can find, they can kind of get it. But I guess that's where your role comes in, is that you try to find these account takeover attempts or even like these suspicious changes in account details that you can flag.
Yeah, this happened actually. All kind of a situation happened in our history, but we put a lot of attention effort to protect the creator, especially the large creators account. But still, all kind of a situation will happen. For example, someone will be phishing and then give out them their password, or sometimes they even just click something and then the malwares have been installed on their device. And usually for those creator, like large creator or influencer, they not work on their own, right? So they have a team who help them, like some of them like so access that account, and later on someone will like change the payout account and the money go out to the fraudsters. So
Yeah.
it happens. And also once the money leave the platform, it's very hard tracing back. Even though we have a good relationship with our downstream like provider, try to tracing the money back, but still sometimes bad things happen.
Yeah.
And this is only one kind, right? And also another like situation like someone was stolen audience account, or like they create a fake account on the audience and do the collusion with the creators, right? And some creator like may be aware of that, some might not, right? And also could be potentially money laundering. Those things happen. We do have all monitoring and STM, those things sit there like first line and second line to watch those kind of activity suspicious.
Yeah, very helpful. And so many more questions. But Angela, I would love to hear from your perspective. What does, I mean, at Discover, it's a very big business across credit cards, online banking, personal loans, home loans, even. What does your fraud kind of world look like in terms of the types of fraud you receive or are vulnerable to, or even just in terms of what you're personally focused on?
Sure. So I think what we're spending, or what I know we're spending a lot of time on, is because we're focusing on our digital environment, we want to be able to have our digital customers have a seamless experience, and everyone's moving towards a digital environment than in-person branches. We're focusing very much on our authentication and verification. So we've spent a lot of time the past year or two really making sure that is robust and proactive, but also legitimate customers, that it makes sense for them when they're trying to have access to their account, open a new account, or move money seamlessly. We are also focusing a lot on first party fraud. That is something that I think the industry as a whole has seen really move to the forefront the past few years. I think we've been distracted by a lot of the scams. So I think focusing on first party fraud and how to identify and prevent it has been at the forefront for the industry. And document fraud ties into that very closely because of the fact that we're collecting financials and driver's license and passports, and customers are trying to secure a mortgage and they know that they need to meet specific income requirements. That temptation is there. That line gets very blurred very quickly, but it can result in losses. We're also, I think the industry has been hit really hard with a lot of social engineering, which is specifically challenging because that activity happens to the customer, the victim, outside of our ecosystem. So it's very hard for us to prevent it, but we need to also understand how we can identify it quickly within our ecosystem and then react to it quickly. And the digital space makes that difficult because the money is moving quickly. And as Wah mentioned, we're working with a lot of types of transactions that are not reversible, and recovery efforts can be very complex and time consuming depending on the institutions.
Yeah, very helpful. And one key thing I'd love to talk about more is just the move from like in-branch retail to digital, and like the parallels between the highly digital world that TikTok operates in and then where banks will be operating in quite soon. Before we get there, just to talk about how my world and Inscribe's world interacts with your two worlds. And Angela, thanks for giving some examples of how documents can be used. So yeah, like in terms of account opening, like creating a new account for a credit card or a loan, we often help with like a proof of business ownership or proof of residency. Then when it comes to underwriting, proof of income. And then in terms of some of your use case, like bank account verification is very common for us. So before dispersing out cash to creators, you can verify bank account numbers with bank letters or bank statements to verify the last four digits. And there's it's interesting intersections between all of our worlds. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is find the patterns that lead to the fraudsters and the ways that they're behaving. But before we get to that particular conversation, we'd love to just hear a little bit more, Angela, in terms of the move from in branch to digital and what that has meant for your world and Discover and the considerations and risks that brings.
It's a lot easier for people to remain anonymously. And as much as the banks are focusing on all of the attributes that we need to collect and verify digitally, the fraudsters are understanding how easy it is for them in this anonymous environment to understand the data points and the types of documentation and verification checks that are in place that we have and exploit them easier. When you have a branch environment, you have teller training and you have someone standing physically in front of you with paper documentation that you can actually hold and touch and review. You are interacting with somebody, so you can pick up on social cues. If it is a victim of a scam, there's a lot of questions that you can pick up on. There's a lot of things that the customer might say that tip off that in-person teller or branch manager that's a victim of a scam, or if it's an actual fraudster. It's very difficult because you're comparing, pardon me, the person that's in front of you with the documentation that they're providing you. In the digital environment, you are removing so much of that. So we are relying on cross checks of data points that we cannot physically see, an anonymous human that we cannot physically see and interact with. And again, it comes down to speed. We are designing our authentication and verification processes to allow legitimate customers to open accounts quickly and move money quickly because it's still about the customer experience and the profits staying where they should. We want to secure those customer relationships quickly. That is part of our business, in addition to the customer user experience. So having to strike that balance between trying to get our digital environment there quickly so that we can keep up with all of the other banks that are doing the same thing is a challenge, because we want to introduce a better digital environment. We want to stay innovative. We want to keep things moving quickly, but we have to understand how, when we introduce those things without proper risk management, it can also easily be exploited by fraudsters. So it's striking that balance constantly and making sure that those parallel tracks are timed well to work together.
Yeah, like the trust equation changes entirely. Like trust goes way down, and so it needs to be re-established via other means. And while at TikTok, it's such an interesting contract where you're like 100% digital from day one, but also global as well. And so like you've had to almost deal with the most complex risks from day one. But curious to hear how you think about digital risk and how you've been able to move to that future without transitioning from like in person or retail. You just went straight to the end state.
Yeah, for us, all the transaction happen that we call CNP, cannot present. But the fundamental logic is very similar to the traditional bank or Discover, those kind of industry. It's that we need make sure we verify this person and we trust this person, right? And another is is who really own the account, not the ATO. So we summarize the critical fraud problem is like two. One is not the fake account, and another is the ATO. Of course, we have abuse like those friendly those stuff, but they are actually not as severe as those first two. How we verify? We want get evidence. So the bank or like they have a branch, they can verify the document by themselves, like in person. But for us, we can't do that. So everything is happening online. So we try to through the data to get them more evidence, right? How they behavior, how they adjust login, those etc. IPs. We leverage a lot on the more the evidence we can get, which is the data or behaviors the user have. But the logic is still the same. We want to make sure we verify, we get enough evidence. This is a real person. This is his own person. However, we still have we leverage the traditional method because we can't do that for everyone. But for the creators or influencers, important account, we will leverage document verification things, especially the bank account. And so in the beginning, actually we do not, but in some regions they are required. You have verified the bank account name with the one we really pay out to. So in some like Europe, some regions we have to do that. But in some region we leverage this, but this creates friction. So we have to balance between these two. So if we 100% match the name or like things of bank, the friction maybe 20 to 30% kind of things we will create trouble. So we have to balance this, and also we leverage the third party, some vendors. I wouldn't mention the name here, but we try to balance this physical or digital, and then the things like 100% match or fuzzy match, those things. Yeah, but I always say the fundamental logic is very similar. Didn't differentiate like digital and physical bank.
Yeah, super helpful and insightful. And Angela, from your perspective, where do documents typically appear? So why you gave a great example, like bank account verification for some of your bigger hosts, but for Discover, we'd love to hear if documents are a source of fraud risk for you all and where they're typically used.
I definitely think that documents are huge in the financial interest industry for fraud risk. For us, or at least for the areas of the industry I've supported, it has been probably given the time that I spent in financial crimes on that BSA AML side is the driver's licenses and the passports. Because I think I heard Wa mention CIP, which is part of our regulation, right, for not authenticating the customer for fraud, but we have to properly identify them. That is a regulatory requirement. And you can do that, of course, like I mentioned earlier, with just data entry and matching data points. So if I'm putting in my social security number, if I'm putting in my date of birth, it's fairly easy to match those things against each other to properly identify. But when there is some type of mismatch there, and it comes to, is it a typo or is it nefarious activity, which are two very different things, and we have to actually collect, we are going towards collecting, or we have been utilizing collecting photos of a driver's license or a passport. There's other options that I've seen used the past 5 years that are a little bit more customer friction, customers needing to call in and take certain quizzes, etc. So the driver's license and the passport, it is risk mitigating, but also customer friendly. If you are legitimate, it's very easy these days. You've got your cell phone in your pocket from anywhere you're at. You can take a photo and get it to the bank. And depending on their turnaround time for reviewing, it can be very quick, very user friendly. But where that gets to be problematic is with the fact that fake passports and driver's license 5 to 10 years ago were much easier to spot than they are today. They're able to mimic the realistic characteristics that you would see, like light glare, looking old as opposed to looking like a brand new to perfect digital option. I think that's what we see a lot in the banking industry because of those CIP and KYC regulations that we adhere to. And we also do use those types of documents for verifying as well.
Yeah, super interesting. And on that note, would love to hear, do you think AI is helping these fraudsters achieve these more convincing documents? I'm not sure if you've seen any examples or have been able to even detect them. One thing it's often difficult to do is this a real doc, a traditionally modified one in Photoshop, or was AI actually used in the process here? Because it's actually sometimes quite indistinguishable. And we're at Inscribe, we're putting a lot of time and research into how do you identify if it is actually AI generated within large language model or if it's just like traditionally modified. But curious, Angela, from your perspective, if you've seen any hints or evidence that AI is helping fraudsters at this point.
I think I've definitely seen that evidence. There's lots of places where you can see examples and lots of different groups and webinars where we're actually doing different comparisons. I think that when you know that it is AI generated, it is easy to look at it through the lens of seeing the differences. But if you are an entry level to mid level investigator that is working their way through a large volume of documents, and, and you were not presented up front with that it was AI generated, it would be very difficult to detect because everything that we thought we knew about what determined a document to be real and fake when you are reviewing it on a screen as opposed to in physical has changed dramatically with the introduction of AI. And I think that it's difficult to keep your staff fully trained on what to look for and how to get your procedures updated on with examples of what that might look like at the same rate that the fraudsters might be implementing it and utilizing it all day, every day in high volume.
Yeah, totally agreed on those points. And I think it's an excellent point of if you have prior knowledge that it might be AI generated, you look for very different things. And it's the same from our perspective in terms of the techniques we use from the machine perspective. The detectors we use to catch AI generated fraud are different to what we use to catch more traditionally generated fraud. What at TikTok would love to hear if you've seen any like evidence that AI is being used to help fraudsters, and maybe it's more about brute forcing passwords or creating fake call scripts to do a phishing attempt. But yeah, curious to see if you've seen anything yet.
Yeah, for us, actually, we at the whole company, we invest a lot on AI. Actually, we create those tools potentially used by the fraudsters. So we have the KeepCard and we integrate the AI function in there. They can easily create some videos and not only the pictures or things. But in reality, for us in the risk team, we do saw the fraudster getting smarter. For example, previously, the name, they usually use some gibberish, right? So we have a gibberish model can easily detect people, they create the names or things. But now they are getting much smarter. Those names are very hard to detect by the gibberish model things. And for here, I didn't actually heavily review those documents as Andrea said, like onboarding CIP, those things. But in my previous job in Didi, actually, we do have a function to verify the driver's driver license and make sure they are the owner who drive the car, provide service for them. And at that time, I do saw a lot of fake stock. They have different levels. Some people like just draw or something, and some people just they do that and they ask their friends like to cross those things offline. I think there will be, and we all heard like deep fake those things, right? So those tools. I think it will be a really challenge ongoing. Sometimes, as Angela mentioned, we use CT first, like a BPO or like operation guys. They review a lot of doc like on the first line. Actually, they can't tell. So we do not have a like completely solution for that yet. But we try to leverage. In some case, we can cross check or even check with the authority. I took another example in China. Actually, a lot of very easy to link it to the police or they like cops. They also provide API, and you provide those documentation ID or those, and then you can get the real person's everything like face or those things, and then you can easily cross check. And we did a similar things in Brazil. They also have a department like a SEPRA or something. They can provide the document and can track the official documentation's identity. So I think authorities connect to authorities database might be a way to help a lot things. Yeah, but again, I think this is really a very challenging topic in the risk domains.
Yeah, at Inscribe, we certainly think it's like the impending trust crisis that's going to emerge next year. A lot of these like previously trustworthy systems are going to have trust decline similar to moving from retail to digital channels. And one stat that we often talk about at Inscribe is that 1 in 16 documents submitted via digital channels are tampered with. And then we've also seen like a 200% increase in the use of AI tools to tamper with documents as well. And it's definitely an accelerating and emerging trend that we're keeping a close eye on. And but also I don't think it's just with documents. I think it's with all forms of verification. For example, even like phone call verification,
Absolutely.
where you can answer a phone and then an LLM can produce a very convincing real-time script of what to say back, and even have ways to get around the questions that a bank might be asking to verify, and they can have very kind of smart ways to get around it. Or we've seen as well, even with connecting direct to source, it's easier to create a bunch of fake spending patterns and then actually spend the money on those patterns such that like your information on file is actually very convincing. And so the lengths basically that fraudsters are going to are just getting ever increasing. And I think it just comes down to something we've just seen across the industry of fraudsters are industrializing. They realize it's a big business in a way, like they can make a lot of money here. And so I think from our perspective as fraud fighters, it's about combating that. And yeah, on that note, we'd love to hear, Angela, from your perspective, like how do you think AI is the answer to AI in terms of helping us prevent and stay ahead?
I don't think it's the full answer. I think it's part of the solution for sure. I think that you hit on something really important. The fraudsters are similar to us in terms of they are looking for scalable, repeatable, efficiency. That's what we talk about when we're talking about running our businesses. And I'm sure that Inscribe thinks about when they're creating solutions. And fraudsters, they have that same mindset. So it is literally a very matched battle. I think the only thing we have to be careful about with, I think we should use AI because I think as an industry, we always need to look at what they're doing and see how we can react to it. We absolutely should be leveraging any innovation that they're leveraging to do bad, to do good. I think that it's just important for us to understand how to blend it in a responsible way with everything that we have that is foundational. And then how, as the humans that are running the companies and managing the risk from our angle, we're able to make sure that we have the right governance around it. So, what are we going to use AI for versus what we will not use AI for, and understanding the why behind it. For what we do use AI for, what is our governance and controls environment going to look like over top of it so that we're not accidentally introducing an innovation that we don't know how to manage the risk of yet, leaving vulnerability for exploitation. So I think AI can help us with a lot of real-time data analysis. I think AI can detect patterns that the naked eye cannot see when we are looking at documentation. Like I said, a lot of your entry-level investigators will not be able to easily detect. But if AI can actually be taught to detect certain signals and patterns, that is a really excellent use case for it that would exist. So plenty of room for us to be using AI. And I think we 100% should. I'm just being in risk management. My mind just goes to the framework around it and the how and the responsibility, the ethics, the integrity. How do we measure the performance and all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agreed on those points. And I think it's the conversation a lot of financial services companies are having right now is how do you make it productive and responsibly and thinking about the governance aspect. While at TikTok, obviously, it sounds like you're not only like receiving threats from fraudsters, but you're building LLMs yourselves and training your own models. But curious to hear how you think LLMs will play a role in your risk management. And I assume you're already using more traditional machine learning techniques and approaches, but LLMs, I think there's like still a lot to be figured out in terms of how they can be useful, because they have very different characteristics and strengths compared to like traditional machine learning models.
Yeah, actually not within the TikTok. I think a lot of fintech, they are tracking those. Personally, I track the LLM since the ChatGPT 3.5 came out 3 years ago. I think this evolving so fast is very powerful tool, I would say. And for us, we treat us or our counterparty, which is defense and offense, right? So both sides are the human. Actually, in my last job, I talked to Froster directly over the phone, and they try to act as a good customer. So they are actually a real person. And how we can protect is not how you existing. You have to evolve as much as your counterparties. So that's actually the key. And we should leverage all the powerful tools, what they are using or even they are not using. We restructure our team to put more effort on and invest more things on the AI. Especially, I think this 2026, we will invest a lot more on the AI leverage and those things. So overall, I would say as a risk management for us, we should always push ourselves to evolve, keep evolving, and leverage all the tools you have and to understand better what's the limitation, what's the advantage, and use that to open to all the tools. LLM, definitely, I think is a hot topic, but still we saw a lot of potential there to help. Last time I talked to people, does it, first, increasing the efficiency. For example, BPO, those things, they are costly, and not only cost, there are limitations there, right? But the AI, they can run 24 hours, and for example, they can reduce the appeal time or submit review, those things. And also, beyond that, actually, if you structure enough good, they can help at least provide an advisory decision for you to make. So those things, and eventually maybe LLM could be super past the human and make the decision. It could be, but yeah. So we invest a lot on this, and we think it is the trend. We encourage all the industry professionals to try to leverage and use that to fight it with the fraud. On another I thought is that first they're getting much smarter, and sometimes it's a kind of a trade-off balance between privacy and the security things. And in different regions, the government have make the choice. But I would say still ongoing. I think the regulators or compliance regulators and government, they should take this as a security also as a consideration. Not only bias too much on the privacy. For example, device ID, Apple's did not allow us to use that anymore. So it's getting harder to, but enjoy a little bit easier. So things like that, things I think that, so they do everything. Another dimension we're taking that we try to let the fraudster pay a lot of more cost to do that. We want to use the same resource, and then they will use more, or their ROI. We want to reduce their ROI to discourage them. If that things actually need not only from us as a TikTok, but also as a regulator, all things like so how increasing cost for the fraudster to commit fraud. So that's actually another dimension we try to push as well.
Yeah, it's like a discouragement and like minimization versus trying to eliminate everything. It's not exactly 0 and 1. You have to work it into constraints of conversion rates. And cool. So I know we're coming close in time here, but just as a final question, I'd love to hear if you have one area or use case that you think other institutions should use AI for as they look to 2026 planning. If there's one killer use case that you definitely recommend they look into. Angela, I'm not sure if you'd like to go first here, if you have anything top of mind.
Something that I think I'm interested the most in, and I say interested in because it's still an early on idea where I want to understand how effective it can be, is using AI for behavior biometrics and to be able to, and this is in direct response more to account takeover and social engineering, because I feel like that is the direction that a lot of scams are going, either social engineering or synthetic identity. So I'm very interested in how can AI possibly, and the speed of AI and the efficiency of AI, help us identify and detect anomalies in a legitimate account, an aged account, customers' behavior quickly so that we can react much faster. Because of that, for that particular use case, it's already penetrated the bank's ecosystem somehow, right? Whether it's an account takeover or whether a customer has given up credentials or gone through the motions of authentication or given a fraudster through social engineering a lot of codes and authentication information. I want to know when it gets to that transaction level in that use case, how can we leverage AI quickly to detect those anomalies? I think that's a challenge. And it might be that fintechs or maybe smaller or different types of companies might have a handle on that already. But I think in an environment like a financial institution, especially a large financial institution with a high volume of activity, that a lot of the scams we've seen in the recent years have really exposed that gap in opportunity, and the fraudsters have been able to exploit it.
Yeah, very good use case there. And at Inscribe, we're thinking a lot about anomaly detection as well and how LLMs can help with that. It's a very large opportunity, but also tricky to make it scalable in deployments.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm not sure if you have a use case, but would love to hear if you've got a recommended use case other folks should think about.
Very similar to Angela's point. Actually, we think on our side, we call it a sequential model. Actually, previously, everyone count like how many transactions, how many login you have did in past. But that's actually a little bit easier for the fraudster to mimic right now. However, if you link them by the timeline, it's a little bit more harder. I hope it is much, much harder for the fraudster to mimic. Like when you register, when you do open the app or do some browser things like, so fraudsters, they just try to mimic the critical point what we are checking right now. But if you can link all this kind of subtle those behavior together, and then it will be much harder for them. And it's easier for us to differentiate the good or normal user and the abnormal user. And then, but I believe this actually take a lot of computation time. But this is actually the advantage that LLM can help. But of course, the model will be a little bit high cost. But I believe this is one of the direction we will invest in 2026. And hopefully we'll get better result. We will share later on in this case.
Awesome. We'll wrap it up there. So thanks to you both for joining. It's been incredibly valuable hearing about how fraud appears in your respective organizations, the trends you're seeing and how you're combating them. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights today. And to the listeners, thanks for listening in. If you'd like to hear more about these conversations and more of them in the future, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Spotify. And as always, keep asking good questions. Thanks all.